Hey guys, it's Nick. I'm here in Green Valley, Arizona at the Titan Missile Museum. And I don't know if you are allowed to film inside, but this is what the outside looks like. We're about to go on a tour, so we'll see if I get to film inside. I'll try to sneak some hidden photo if they don't let me.
Before going on the tour, we're going to watch a brief video explaining the Cold War and the part that the Titan II intercontinental ballistic missile played in it.
All three locations, so that is in Arkansas, in Kansas, and here. 54 silos total. That was all done within 3 years. They had 5,000 people hired in every state to get it finished. Now back at that time, we were kind of out in the middle of nowhere. That was part of the point. So the berms you see over there, those are tailings from the Duval copper mine. That was 8 miles from us back then. It's been active for a long time. The houses and things you see over here, those hadn't been built yet. I don't know if you saw those photos in the bathroom, on that hallway in the near the bathrooms. Shows you what it looked like back then. Not much around. But what we did have here was a 9 megaton warhead right under that silo cover. That's 600 times Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. 20 million people gone like that. So you can imagine they needed tight security here. They didn't have anybody here except for the 4 people on the crew there inside the control center. They did have security forces that would drive around between silos. Each team had 3 or 4 they'd watch over. But when we had a crew change, there's nobody here. Our new crew's going to arrive right here at the gate from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and to get inside safely, they make 4 phone calls to the crew that's working. First call's right there at the base, or at the gate. There's also a camera there, so the working crew can see who's arrived. Now when they get buzzed inside, our new crew's going to come over here to the top of the access portal. As they begin to enter, there's a doorway, closed, second telephone. And the security feature there, they've got to make that phone call within 3 minutes of the first to get through the door. Now that's a security feature because they might have been followed on their way from base. Might get ambushed as they're coming inside. They can deliberately take more than 3 minutes to get to the next phone call because that will alert the crew there's a problem. They're going to call security forces. Now all the years here were safe. That did not have to happen. So they'd be buzzed through that door, and right on the other side there's a containment area and the 3rd telephone. And the security feature there, they got to give a code to the crew that's working. Now the code is something they brought with them. It's written down on a card. They read it off. Got it from base. Once they've given the code, they're allowed to proceed, but they don't want to leave that card laying around, so they get rid of it. And the way they do that, they burn it. There's a coffee can, an old Folgers can, maybe Maxwell House, who knows. It's on the wall, painted red, but it's got burn marks from where they burned those codes year after year, day after day. One crew, though, didn't do that. A friend of mine, he said his commander was so worried they'd be attacked en route from base. He didn't want to carry that card. He was afraid somebody would attack them and grab it. So he'd memorize the code while they were still on base. And you know what he did next? He did. He ate it. I'm less worried about eating it than I'm thinking about trying to remember that code all the way from base, all the way here, and getting it right. Oof. Now once they've given the code, they're going to go to the bottom of the stairwell. They can't get through there because of the blast lock doors, so that's why they make their 4th phone call. We'll talk about that when we're downstairs. Watch your step as you follow me, and you'll see that coffee can right near the top of the stairs as we go through that first round door. Here we go.
What made that guy think he was going to be followed or whatever?
Who knows?
No, that one girl I kept seeing, especially one girl, she told me fast.
How many rattlesnakes are down here that they got 2 signs already before you even hit the first set of stairs? I'm more worried about the rattlesnakes than I am of the radioactivity. There's a coffee can. the size of this door. Looks like an old
And the rest of
telephone.
us can just fill in right here. So when our crew would get to the very bottom of that stairwell there, they've got to make their fourth phone call. And the reason is, you've probably noticed the blast lock door out there. There's one here, and there's two inside here as well. 4 blast lock doors. They are always closed and locked. They're locked using the steel pins you can see on the edge of each door frame. To get through them, they've got to make that call and coordinate with the crew that's working. They'll simultaneously press buttons. And that electronically moves the pins out of the way. At that point, I'm told, it's the lowest ranking crew member that pulls the door open. Would anybody like to do that today? Raise your hand. Come on over. All right, I got you. Door's right there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Did they put some WD-40 on this thing?
Yeah, they sure did. It moves really nice. It's also got a chain, so you can't lock us in here. But you just moved a 6,000-pound door.
All right, awesome.
That's 3 tons, y'all. Each one of these 3-ton doors is going to withstand 1,000 pounds per square inch pressure. 5 pounds per square inch, that's going to knock your house down. They built it like this because they knew this is a target. If it were attacked, even a nuclear bomb, if it were a mile away, everything in here would be intact. So only one of these doors is going to open at a time to make 2 blast locks. This to protect from everything outside, this one to protect from any explosion in the silo. Now the other thing, if there were a nearby nuclear blast, there'd be an electromagnetic pulse. That's why we've got the milled edges on the doors and frames. There'd be neoprene between. That's going to prevent that pulse from coming through because that would trash the electricity in here. There'd be a big shock wave. So depending on where you're standing, if you look around you, you can see the cables are extra long. You see those over there. Lights and small things are hanging on springs. And the cables and equipment have big shock absorbers. Keep them stabilized. That's what you see there. Pretty amazing.
Where does the power come from in this place?
So the power in this place, it's local power. Now if that local power goes out, because that happens sometimes, right? They've got a generator in the silo. Now it's going to take a minute for that generator to heat up. So downstairs, remember I said there's all this equipment down there. One of the things that's down there, batteries. The whole place can run on those batteries while the generators get fired up. And that's going to be important when I talk about guidance system because they've got gyroscopes. Those are going to be spinning and they need the electricity for that. Let's go in where the crew works. We'll go to the left here. That'll take us in the control center. Go on ahead.
Not even a red phone.
Absolutely. Alrighty. I am looking for a couple of volunteers though. Come on over. Have a seat. I'll volunteer. Alright, each of you take a chair. I mentioned when we were in that blast lock area that we need to shock protect all the equipment. We got to shock protect the equipment around us here. Everything you see here got to be kept from damage. So the way they're going to do that, it's the way they built the structure here. They made it so that the floors don't connect to the walls. They're separate. They're suspended on the giant springs you can see surrounding the room. So the floors themselves are shock absorbers. So in theory, what I'm told is if you had a drink on your console, it wouldn't even wiggle if there were Armageddon, but you can see your chairs are strapped down, so you know that they can move. Yeah, I remember I said there was that commander, he was so worried about being attacked, he ate his own code. Well, he's also easy to scare. So my friend told me what they do is they lean on the wall and put their feet on the edge of the floor and push until they can make everything wiggle, just so he thinks something's going on. Of course. No, this equipment here takes up quite a bit of room. These days, of course, you can hold that on your cell phone, but back then it was all electronics that were kind of mechanical in operation, right? There was a lot of analog material here. Didn't have our solid state electronics, so it took up quite a bit of room, and it was also very noisy. And it needed to be kept cool, so there were fans and chilled water to do that. So that noise meant that you had to put in that silver paneling on the stairwell. Add the carpet to the floor. It wasn't there initially because it was so loud it was damaging people's hearing in here. Just trying to imagine that, just the ambient noise in here was quite intense. Now, as I said, we got equipment below. That includes those batteries. That would be backup power and some other things to keep the facility running. Upstairs where the crew would take their breaks. Just cat naps, snacks. You could make meals. We've got a whole kitchen up there. But they're never going to be up there all at once, right? Because we've only got 4 people on our crew. There always has to be 2 people everywhere in the facility except for upstairs. No lone zone is what they call it. 2-man operation. In the late 70s, it was 2 people because women were part of the combat team, including somebody who sat right here and was later director of the museum until she retired. So, the only place you're going to be by yourself is up there. Now we got 4 people on our crew, as I mentioned, 2 officers. You guys get the nice chairs. The enlisted people, they're going to stand back here. Guys. Commander's in charge of everything here. You can see on the commander's console we've got 3 buttons. They're labeled target 1, 2, and 3. Target 2 is lit up because this particular missile is directed at target 2. But you could switch the presets. There are 3 options if you were told to do so. You push those buttons. You might also be given new punch tape. That's how we stored our data back in the day. It's Mylar. Yeah, we're not going to touch it though. Yeah. I know, it's so tempting. It's like, oh, yeah, that's how we store data. Now, even if you stole that, you wouldn't be able to read it because it can only be read on the machine there. But they're not going to tell you what any of that says. You don't know exactly what those targets are. You can guess, but they're not going to say. And there's a couple reasons. Well, security is one. You don't want that information to get out by accident or by intent. But another important reason, it's psychology. Your job is to launch 9-megaton warhead. It's a heavy responsibility. If you know where it's headed, that could burden you further. You might hesitate if called upon to do the launch, which is your job. Psychology is also why everything in here is painted green. They did studies. Figure out what is the most soothing color, because they want to make sure everybody here is calm, cool, and collected as they possibly could be. Now, we don't know that targeting information to this very day. Normally, after 50 years, you could do a FOIA request. You could find out, be declassified. But in this case, because it's connected to the nuclear program, it's exempt from that. We'll probably never. Now, our deputy, that's you. You're in charge of communications, so that's the equipment you see right over here. And you recall we used a telephone to come downstairs. It was a direct line. You just pick it up and spoke right into it. But some of us have been on the planet long enough to remember using these. Got a few phones with dials. You could dial other phones on site. You could get an outside line. But any of their communications connected to the mission, instructions, directions, emergency messaging, that's all going to be done using radio. They'll get those messages from Strategic Air Command. That was based in Omaha, Nebraska at Offutt Air Force Base. 1 speaker here's for that. But like everything else in the military, there'd be a backup. That's Marsh Airfield Base. That's in Riverside, California. So they'd be getting messages from there using 4 radio systems. One you might have noticed as you were driving into the museum. Did you see that big one with all the spiky things on it? That's a high-frequency radio tower. It gets a signal around the planet all by itself. Now that's important because if an emergency message goes out from Strategic Air Command, that emergency message has to get to everyone on the mission. That's our entire triad, land, sea, and air. So all of the ICBMs, land-based missiles, all the submarines, no matter where they are, all of the airplanes, no matter what base they're at, they all got to get those messages. That tower has a backup. If it's damaged, want to get the message through, that backup is underground. It's protected. It'll telescope up out of the ground if needed. Another fun fact, it's still being used, but not by the military. It's available if you've got a ham radio license. You can go plug in and use it. We got a couple clubs that come out. Somebody contacted Italy the other day. That's pretty cool. Now their day-to-day communications, there's a tower out top side, I'll show you. That one has 2 backups. So one's underground, I'll show you what that looks like. One we've telescoped up so you can see what that looks like. It's pretty cool. The other 2 radio systems, one is low frequency. We still use a system like that to communicate with submarines. It's slow, but dependable. That measures vibration. It's not a voice message. The earth vibrates, the water vibrates, that's how we get those messages through. So it's not going to be a voice message you get, it's going to be a printout. That is a teletype machine right there. Prints out the message. Our 4th radio system, that one's the other end of the spectrum. That's ultra high frequency. That's used to communicate with airplanes, helicopters, stuff that's in the air. The airplane that's going to be important here. Have you heard of Looking Glass? Doomsday airplane. That was in the air 24/7 all the years of the Cold War. That was our mobile strategic air command unit. Now you're in charge of some other things. Along with communications, yeah, you got a heavy burden. You got to keep track of personnel for safety and security. Remember I said 2-man policy here. So if that Roadrunner crew came, they needed to do some work, they're going to grab a walkie-talkie from over there. They'll be in touch with you. You got hands-free. That's why you guys got foot pedals there. You're going to write down where they are at any time on this super high-tech locator board. Lexi and a grease pencil gets the job done. You're also our timekeeper. You might have noticed there's local time here. This is a 24-hour clock. That's why it looks a little bit different, but it's still correct. But if you did have to launch, you're going to use the clock right here at your station. This one is set to military time, Zulu time, Greenwich Mean Time. Reason for that, everyone on the mission, no matter where they are on the planet, their clock shows the same time. So if they're getting instructions, everybody knows what to do and when to do it. Now the 2 other folks here, the enlisted personnel, like I said, they're standing back here. One is our ballistic missile analyst technician. That's an electrician who's going to manage all the electrical systems on the missile. So they use the panels from this one all the way over here to do that job. That's why we've got cables running down the cableway connecting this equipment to the missile so they know what's going on. One of their important jobs, guidance system. You see this indicator here. You also see a bunch of blank panels around it. The reason for that, they did an upgrade in the 70s. As it got newer, it got smaller. But what that system depended on, because we didn't have GPS even with an upgrade, was gyroscopes on board the missile. Those gyroscopes are constantly spinning using that electricity. That's how the missile knows where it is, where it's going. Fun fact, how do we calibrate gyroscopes? You know? The North Star. Polaris. Just like sailing across the ocean in days of yore, we used a star to direct our missiles. 4th person here, our missile facilities technician. They're going to be standing right over here. They are going to use the panels here to control all the systems and subsystems that keep everything on the whole facility functioning. That includes things like the freight elevator, the plumbing, and the chilled water system. That also goes down the cableway. It's protected by shock absorbers. This is going to keep everyone in here cool, it keeps the equipment cool, and keeps the missile cool. So when our crew starts their shift, what are the first things they're going to do? They're going to spend 3 hours doing a checklist to make sure everything here is functioning properly. Every light, every switch, make sure the gauges are all correct. And then they do it again halfway into the shift. So every 12 hours, every piece of equipment here and the floor below is going to be checked. So I mentioned we're going to keep the missile cool. Keep the missile at 60 degrees. That's kind of a big deal. It uses liquid propellants. Earlier missiles also use liquid propellants. If they're big, they need that liquid to be able to move. What's different about the Titan II? Brand new liquid propellants. New fuel, new oxidizer developed for this missile because earlier missiles like the Atlas and the Titan I needed liquid oxygen to move. Now that liquid oxygen was effective, but the problem is it's going to evaporate if you leave it sitting too long on the missile. So you'd have to load the missile when it was time to launch. That costs time. You'd also have to lift that missile out of the silo to launch it. That costs time too. So you'd need nearly a half hour to get an Atlas missile or a Titan I missile in the air. And that's a problem for your deterrence plan because it only takes a half hour for a missile to get from there to here. So by the time you know it's coming, you don't have time to do your retaliation. So you lost your edge on your piece for deterrence. So they developed a brand new fuel and oxidizer for the Titan II. It sits on board the missile. It's comfortable at 60 degrees. They also figured out how to launch from inside the silo itself. So that means instead of needing almost a half hour to get the missile in the air, all they need is 58 seconds. You got your edge back. Now you tell me, who makes the decision we're going to launch? President. Yeah. The president cannot do that alone. It's a retaliatory strike. So there has to be 100% confirmation that an attack is underway. Who's looking at that? NORAD's checking the skies. You can't change your mind. Once you get this going, you can't pull it back. You can't change direction. You need to be absolutely certain. So when NORAD sees something's up, in the 1980s, saw geese. Thought maybe it was something. It wasn't. But as soon as they see something, Strategic Air Command is going to know about it. Pentagon is going to know about it because they're formulating an emergency action message. They got to mobilize the entire team, so they're getting ready, talking to the president, talking to chiefs of staff, and once that 100%, yes, this attack is underway, then the president makes the decision using the nuclear football. It's nuclear codes. Once those are given to the Pentagon, then the process is initiated. At that point, Strategic Air Command will send out that emergency action message that the Pentagon's been working on. It goes to everyone on the mission using those 4 radio systems I mentioned. It's going to sound like this. They know they've got to decode it. They've got books special for that purpose. They each do their job, then they check each other's work, because that's part of our 2-man policy. Got to make 100% sure. Now what you don't get to do when you figured it out, yes, it's time to launch, you'd think we'd use those red buttons somehow. But we don't. They're just lights. Those tell us the blast lock doors are open. Homer Simpson's the only one who gets slant buttons. Black buttons what you use to move pins out of the way so people can get in and out. What you're going to do instead, you got keys to do the launch. Can you imagine? It'd be way too easy with those buttons being on right now. Yeah. So you got to use keys. See more order safe. You can see it right there. It says entry restricted to MCC and DMCC. On duty, that's the 2 of you. You each have padlocks you bring with you on your shift. You're not here, somebody else's padlocks are on there. So if you came and hung out, even when it's not your shift, you can't get inside. Only the people on duty. Now once you get inside, you'll grab the keys, but the other thing that'll be inside that safe, there are packets. There'll be about 20 packets like this. Now have codes on them. You're going to go through those packets, find a code that matches your emergency order message. And when you get inside, there's an additional message that's going to match the second part of your emergency action message. So you see there's 2 codes. That's your 2-factor authentication pre-internet. That's how you know it's time to launch. Next thing you'll know, what time to launch, which we know is soon, right? I said we've got only a few minutes, but it's got to be precise. So our deputy uses this clock here, marks the time, get everybody ready. We've got to do one thing else before you can do that launch. You need a code. Can't launch without the code. That code gets inputted here. There's 6 wheels here. There's 16 letters on each of those wheels. That is 6 to the 16th power. 16 to the 6th power, excuse me. That's a 1 in nearly 17 million chance you do that, so you don't try to guess that code, right? They don't want people just out here fiddling with it. If you did, on the 7th try, it's going to lock up. You can't launch. Now what this lock is attached to, it says butterfly valve lock. There are 4 butterfly valves on the engines of the missile. That's what allows the fuel and oxidizer to mix together. Those valves are locked with a pin. It's the cutaway, locked with a pin until you put in the code, turn the key, then the pin moves out of the way. And this is what allows for liftoff, because the valves open up. But before the fuel and oxidizer mixes together, we've got to do a few more things on board the missile itself. One is, it's got to power itself. Right now it's getting power from here, but it's got to be self-powered, so it's got batteries on board. Those batteries charge up in 28 seconds. Silo cover's got to open. That happens in 19 seconds, even though that cover weighs 760 tons. Yeah, the engineering for that alone is huge. When it opens, you're going to hear alarms down here, and the reason for that, you got to know it's moving. So it's got radar surrounding it, so they know what's happening. Now while that is occurring, that silo cover is opening, we're getting ready for launch, my favorite detail is happening. And that is, there's a 100,000-gallon water tank that parallels the silo. It's going to be pouring water into the silo itself. Reason for all that water? It protects our missile. We figured out how to launch from inside the silo, but the problem with that, there's going to be a lot of noise and vibration in a confined space. That damages the missile because it's riveted together. We can't weld aluminum and copper. We want to keep it protected, so we put water in the silo, and when the engines fire up, that water is going to turn to steam. And the process of making steam absorbs the sound waves. That's what keeps everything protected. So that's what you see, it's steam turning to water vapor, getting pushed out the sides of the silo during launch. Now the guidance system's going to communicate one last time with the missile, and then that's when the fuel and oxidizer mixes together and we get liftoff. Is my team ready to simulate that launch? Yes. All right. Your key is here. Yours is way over on the side. It's a 2-person operation. My friend said he tried to turn a bolt using a stick. Did not work. Good for us. So you got to turn simultaneously. So we will count down. Our commander will do that. And you'll turn. Which way do you turn? Yeah, it'll be 1/4 turn to the right. So count her down. 3, 2, 1, and then you'll turn together.
No, you're good.
You're the one. 3, 2, 1. There you go. Turn that key, and your job is done. That's it. So you can see our launch sequence is lighting up here. The green light, launch enabled. That means this, which is a computer, it's taken over. The butterfly valves have opened up. The battery activated light is on. That's telling us those batteries are charging. Now at this point, 28 seconds will feel like forever. I think that's why they put a cigarette tray right there. Now our APS power light should be coming on. That means we're waiting for silo sunk. That's our silo door opening. And that'll give us an alarm right here. There it is. Guidance go light's on. You can see it flashing there as well. Guidance system's communicating with the missile. Meanwhile, that water's pouring in, getting ready for the launch. Now we just gotta wait for it. And wait for it. And wait for it. There you go. Fire in the engines. I know. And
It's getting real.
That's it. You did it.
And what happens to everybody that's in here?
What happens to everybody that's in here? Well,
They can't go out.
they can't go out. It's not recommended. I mean, in theory, they could. It would take them a while because if you're launching this, that means you're about to get hit. So if you ran out You might get out in time to get obliterated. The other thing you can do is wait here. You got emergency supplies of food and water. That water is going to be, food and water will last you for about a month. That air will only last you about 3 weeks. At which point you're going to move all the equipment out of their air vent, which gets shut down during launch. You got to open that up. You can climb up. There's a ladder there. What you're going to find though is not cool. This missile itself, that 9 megaton bomb, that's 25-mile radius destroyed. So every mountain range you can see around us is going to be gone. The Soviet bombs were bigger. So if you came out, then it's like, okay, what direction do I walk to find more food and water? Yeah, a lot of the radiation would be dissipated because it's logarithmic, so that, but you know, it's not going to be a pretty scene, that's for sure. But the idea behind all of this was to not do it. That was the goal. You threaten me with this, I'll threaten you with that. So yeah, the idea was to not look at it.
Is the missile still in there? In the
The
site?
missile's still in there,
But
it
it's
does
not
not have a
a
warhead
warhead.
on it. We totally could not get away with that.
No, I'm just saying, but the missile itself.
The
is
missile's
still-
there, let's go look at it. We're gonna walk down the
Okay.
cableway. You can see some suits, they look like space suits. It's not protective gear for radiation, it's protective gear for the fuel and oxidizer. So when those work crews are working with the fuel and oxidizer, they're gonna wear those. That stuff is a great propellant, but it will kill you on contact. Yeah, it's that nasty. I had somebody on my tour said, oh yeah, I was wearing the suit, the whole flood of oxidizer came over. He would be instantly dead if he didn't have his suit on. It just turns to
So
acid.
who maintained this? The crew of 4 constantly maintained it. Like they had like maintenance schedules and. all
Yeah,
that
they had schedules, and then they had those maintenance crews come in to do special projects. Or if there was a problem, yeah, they'd come in and do that as well.
You have all these redundancies. What happens if one of the guys' lock doesn't open? You got like an axe
You
to,
shoot the lock off.
you shoot the
They
lock.
have guns in here, so yeah, that would be an option.
I think that's easier
At that
said
point, I
than,
probably.
like that's easier in the movies to shoot off a lock, right? If you sh-
And honestly, at that point, I'd be so stressed out, I'd be like, I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah, done. All right, let's go ahead down in the cableway, and we'll go look at the missile in the silo.
It looks like an old telephone central office from the 70s or something. Check out these suits. It's like a gurney in case somebody gets injured or something.
They maintain this really nice, don't they?
Now this side we're at level 2 right now, goes down 9 levels. Starts from 146 feet to the bottom. And that's because our missile is 103 feet tall, it's 10 feet in diameter. This is the largest ICBM ever deployed by the United States. Now if you're looking out the window, you can see on the side walls there's some panels that's got spun fiberglass that's going to dampen sound along with the water during our launch. And the platforms you see there, some of them are folded down, so you get a look at how that would operate. The rest of them are folded up. They're folded down if you're working on the missile, they're folded up so the missile can launch. So the idea is to keep them up most of the time. Now if you're wondering about the water coming in during the launch, and you meander over this way, you can see there's some photos on the wall over here that shows you the ring the missile's sitting on. That's nearly 100 feet below us. And it's below that ring where water's going to come in during the launch sequence. So if you take a look and you see that middle photo, there's pipes at the top where water comes in, that's underneath the missile. And then that cement part below it is where the water's going to accumulate and push out the sides.
And how high does it get?
So it just gets up to that cement area.
Okay.
Yeah, because, but as it's filling, it starts filling before the missile fires, but Now, one fellow, if you're curious about what people did when they were super bored down here, one guy told me he used to skateboard down there. I could believe it.
Oh my God.
Now, if
They
you're,
got fireworks.
yeah, that would be, you gotta get out of there fast. So, the pipe you see in the wall here, that isn't for water. What that's for is that guidance system I mentioned. We use gyroscopes, calibrated using north. There's equipment up topside. That determines where true north is. It's going to shine a beam of light down that pipe through equipment on the blue table and right through the porthole behind me onto the gyroscopes on the missile. That's how they did it. Now, when they did that upgrade I mentioned, they used the inertial movement of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth, to determine true north. But they still depended on gyroscopes. So using that system, they test-fired 32 missiles. 87% were within 3/4 of a mile of their target, which is pretty amazing. So then with slide rules and gyroscopes. But of course now we've got a couple things going for us. We've got more accurate guidance system. GPS was developed by the military. We use it now on our phone. It's like no big deal. We also have guided missiles. That's a big difference. It's changed the game. This is a ballistic missile. It fires like a bullet out of a gun. It's got a fixed trajectory. You can't change anything. Once it's in the air, it's going to do what it's going to do. That's why they made them so big. So if they missed, still do destruction. We don't do that mass destruction anymore. Our more accurate guidance system and guided missiles can move. When they're in flight, that means you can be precise about where that missile's headed. So we don't need to make missiles this big anymore. The advantage of that, we have 4 people taking care of 1 missile, 1 warhead. Now, with Minuteman, 2 people can manage 10 silos, 3 missiles on each one, and those missiles go exactly where you want them to go and don't cause the collateral damage. They're also a lot safer for crew members. It's solid propellants. Can't use solid on here. It's too big. Those solid propellants don't need the care that you need to take with the liquids here. Now the missile we're looking at, this one is a training missile at Shepherd Air Force Base. We have it here because it's completely empty. Nothing on it. But that shell alone weighs 15,000 pounds. It's going to take off with the force of 2 747 jets, and it's going to fly up to 6,300 miles to get to its target. It'll arrive in about a half hour, which means it's flying at 17,000 miles per hour. That's 20 times the speed of sound. Furthermore, when it takes off, all the fuel and oxidizer on board is burned away completely in 5.5 minutes. And it's just the bullet. So that means the stages fall off. This is stage 2. Stage 1's below it. They fall off when they're complete. At the end of 5.5 minutes, what's left? The black reentry vehicle at the top with the warhead on board. It'll be about 300 miles in the air at that point. It will continue to 800 miles above the planet before getting pulled back down. It's got altimeters. That's why the bomb can't go off until it reaches a certain height. Now the other thing about it going that high, it's going into space because it leaves the atmosphere. And because of that, we use Titan IIs in the space program. Neil Armstrong used a Titan II as part of the Gemini mission. He, of course, was in a space capsule. So it's like a smart car-sized vehicle at 17,000 miles an hour guided by gyroscopes. Have fun. We used 2 for 2 of the Viking missions to Mars, and 1 was used for the first Voyager mission. That one is still sending us data from outside of the solar system. It's pretty amazing. Now they thought this program would be in place for 10 years. They did an upgrade. It meant they could use it for 24. But at the end of that 24 years, as I mentioned, we had other systems in place. This was very expensive. It didn't make sense to continue it. We decommissioned everything as part of the SALT agreement with the Soviet Union, so we took away those big warheads. However, we were able to continue using Titan II missiles to launch satellites from Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that happened until 2003. Feels like last week. So a project intended for 10 years. We got 4 decades of service from the Titan II, which is pretty cool.
Wow, so that was a really cool tour. And this is the cover for the missile that pulls back before it launches.
All the way down to the floor.
Whoa. Wow, and these are the rockets. Crazy.
Oh, okay. They're in the back, right? Yeah. They're in the back. Did you want to grab the trash out of the bathrooms? I'll do that. Oh, sounds good. Thank you.
They had a gun. He was forced to ensure that it would not decrease his job.
So guys, that's a look at the Titan Missile Museum in Green Valley, Arizona, just outside of Tucson, about 20 miles or so. Definitely come check it out. Something really interesting to see if you're in the area. Hope you like this one, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.